When I quit my job, my entire family was upset. My mother-in-law called me a worthless, unprofitable waste of space. My sister-in-law accused me of not being a responsible man. Before we discussed getting a divorce, I wanted you to look after the child I had for someone else. But now, I can't wait another minute, my wife said, handing me a prepared divorce agreement. However, the sight of my family's horrifying faces filled me with a surge of excitement. The explanation was straightforward. My grandfather, the wealthiest man in the nation, recognized me as his grandson and instructed me to resign from my position and return home to inherit his billion-dollar business, so no one was aware that I had quit my job that day. Chapter 1. I tried to control my excitement about inheriting a multibillion-dollar company as I stood at the door. I wiped my perspiring palms on my trousers, but before I could open the door, I heard voices inside. "Why is George still not back? I'm starving, and I don't even know what he's so busy with every day," a woman's voice said. "The house is collapsing, and he hasn't earned any money. In my mother-in-law's words, I truly don't understand what use he is." Even though I was outside, I could practically picture her look of disgust. I looked at my timepiece. I was about 10 minutes late because I just had a quick conversation with my grandfather. After getting married, I lived with my wife, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law because I had previously been an orphan and yearned for a family. As they say, 3 women make a drama, and I had experienced their bullying before. I didn't mind, though. I've always believed that women have gentle hearts but sharp tongues. Even so, I still found it a little unpleasant to hear this now. I stood there, listening, without opening the door. "You know what George is like, lazy and good at slacking off," said my wife Willow with a chilly snort. "I will find an excuse to argue with him, as I used to, and compel him to kneel on the washboard while we eat when he finally prepares dinner. Do not be concerned." All 3 women chuckled at those remarks. Willow would constantly cause a commotion at the dinner table whenever I worked late. She would always find a point of contention, whether it was over bland soup or salty food. She would frequently evict me from the house, leaving me starving, or occasionally force me to kneel on the washboard. I had previously believed it to be a coincidence, but now I see that it was all part of a calculated effort to make me look bad. Chapter 2. As laughter reverberated throughout the room, I experienced a chill. I stood there for a long time before forcing a chilly expression, opening the door and entering. The laughter stopped the moment I walked in. 3 equally impatient faces turned to face me. "You're so late. Where the hell have you been? Why are you standing there? Get to the kitchen and cook," my mother-in-law said. She looked at me, and her face darkened when she saw that I had nothing to eat. "Did you not even buy any groceries? Are you planning to starve us 3 women?" she said, pointing a finger at me. Willow instantly got to her feet, her rage growing. "George, you'd better explain yourself clearly to me, or I won't be so forgiving." My sister-in-law, Maria, who had been staring at her phone, yelled in shock as I was about to speak. "What's going on with you? I just heard from my friend that you quit your job. You made such a big decision all by yourself. Are you planning to live off us at home enjoying life like some useless man?" Willow and my mother-in-law both asked at once, "What did you quit your job?" My mother-in-law, who looked like she was about to burst, said, "You know the mortgage is over $5,000 per month and Willow only makes $4,000. You dared to quit your job when we were depending on your income to help pay the mortgage. Have you gone insane?" Willow was shaking with rage. She insisted, "Did you quit your job? Tell me it's some kind of misunderstanding. You didn't quit, right?" I scowled deeply, feeling both disappointed and irritated. Despite my frustration, I made an effort to clarify that, yes, I had quit my job, but it was because I discovered However, Willow gave me a hard slap across the face before I could finish speaking. With a sharp pain in my heart, I covered my cheek. Chapter 3. Willow seemed to think she had heard a joke when I said, "Don't you care why I quit? What if I've been through something difficult? What if I face something I can't overcome? Or what if I have a better opportunity waiting for me? Difficult, she sneered. Who doesn't encounter obstacles at work? Yes, I spend my entire day in an office where I'm protected from the weather, but you have to run outside delivering takeout in the wind or rain. Willow darkened her face but remained silent for more than a month in Chapter 4. However, my mother-in-law ignored Willow's altered expression and went on to say, "What can you even do? You can't make money, and you were unaware that Willow was pregnant." Sensing the tension, Maria tugged awkwardly at my mother-in-law's sleeve, asking, "What's the point of your life?" "Stop it, Mom." My mother-in-law gave Maria an odd look and appeared perplexed. "I'm telling you that men like him deserve criticism. Why shouldn't I speak? Aren't you the one who constantly criticizes him? Why are you upset when I'm just telling the truth?" I forced a sour smile. "If you give him an inch, he'll take a mile." For more than 2 months I hadn't had any intimate relations with Willow, not because I didn't want to, but rather because she wouldn't let me. She claimed that even if I showered and scrubbed myself clean, she would still find me repulsive because she detested the smell of my perspiration. I believed I was solely to blame. But now I know that she had someone else, not me. I sighed as I said, "Because Willow's child isn't mine, right, Willow?" My mother-in-law was about to say something, but she quickly realized what was going on from the looks on Willow's and Maria's faces, so she covered her mouth. Willow clenched her teeth and replied, "Yes, exactly. I've been sick of you for a while. Just looking at you makes me feel ill. You're like a dried-up corpse." Then she flung a divorce decree at my feet after taking it from her bag. "Since you've already quit your job, it's obvious that you're no longer valuable to me, so I was going to wait until you helped me during my confinement before telling you the truth and ending our relationship. Let's file for divorce." Chapter 5. I grabbed the divorce decree and quickly read it. I was shocked to learn that the agreement said I would go with nothing because she had cheated on me. I couldn't contain my laughter and laughed bitterly. With a firm tone, Willow stated, "Yes, the down payment for the house was covered by the bride price you gave me, and you have been making mortgage payments since we got married. But ultimately, it is still my premarital property, so it must go to me. Even if you sue, you won't win, and you know it yourself. All of your savings are in my account. I couldn't believe you didn't even have enough money to hire a lawyer." Willow was introduced to me by a friend, and I was quite pleased with her. I foolishly consented to all of her demands, including allowing her to purchase the house before we were married using my savings. Maria and my mother-in-law are completely in agreement. "That's correct. My sister has been so giving that she didn't even ask you to raise her child. How many men have spent years caring for someone else's child, only to discover that it wasn't theirs? Additionally, you have spent years residing in the house. We didn't even request rent from you. Don't act unappreciative because you've been treated with kindness." I felt as though all of my sincerity had been given to the dogs when I saw the repulsive looks on their faces. I had put in a lot of effort over the years to provide for the family, treating Maria like my own sister and my mother-in-law like my own mother. I couldn't even afford new clothes despite working 2 jobs. Willow didn't even want the thermal underwear I was wearing because it was too large for her. I delivered takeout in this freezing weather without even being able to purchase a down jacket. I had frostbite on my hands and feet. And this was the outcome of Chapter 6. I was so preoccupied with my hands' frostbite that I completely forgot to sign the divorce papers. However, the 3 of them misinterpreted my silence and believed that I was trying to hold on and was hesitant to get a divorce. "What's wrong? You can't bear to sign. Let me tell you, it's my daughter who wants the divorce, and you have no choice in this," my mother-in-law sneered. "If you didn't want to be abandoned, you should have been a useful man by now, not this useless thing." Maria said haughtily, "My sister didn't do anything wrong," as she looked down on me. "She must naturally find another way out because you are the useless one." Willow's expression was a little more subdued than the other 2, but she can't just hang herself from your crooked tree." She sighed and said, "Let's part on good terms." But I couldn't tell if she was trying to convince me to get a divorce or if she was feeling guilty. "I am aware of your intense love for me and your reluctance to let me go, but trying to mend what is already damaged will only make us both angry. I don't want my son to refer to a worthless man like you as his father, even if you decide not to file for divorce and are prepared to raise my child as your own." I grinned sourly when I heard the three of them say these things. I signed the documents without hesitation. The three of them appeared to exhale in relief when they saw me sign, and they all smiled sincerely for the first time today. Willow gently held the divorce decree against her chest and told me, "All right, you can go now that it's signed. Remember to visit the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow to complete the process." I took out my phone to call my driver as soon as I nodded. "Don't drive anything too fancy, but come down and pick me up. A Bentley worth a few $1,000,000 will suffice." I grinned at the three of them after I hung up. "You decided to get a divorce. If you later come to regret it, don't come looking for me." With shocked expressions on their faces, the three of them exchanged stunned glances. Chapter 7. I closed the door behind me and walked out of the house, ignoring the three of them's looks. However, the three of them were only momentarily taken aback before dismissing it as mere boasting. They locked the door behind them and didn't even try to follow me as if they were worried I would change my mind and return. I did not attempt to explain. After all, money is like pregnancy. Others can always tell after a while. However, the driver had been silent for too long when I went upstairs and came back down, so I finally had to ask, "Sir, didn't you say you were going upstairs to explain things to the whole family and then head to the estate together? Why are you alone?" I sighed as I looked at the house I had lived in for nearly 5 years and said, "Maybe it's just fate." I had intended to tell them the good news after we had a nice meal together, but okay, so who would have guessed that they would only be interested in my leaving my job and not why? If they had even inquired, things might have turned out differently. I started to get cold sweats when I thought about this. I would have been unaware of Willow's pregnancy and affair if they had inquired. To keep me in the dark for the rest of my life, she may have even led me to believe the child was mine. I said, "Okay, let's stop talking," and stopped talking, rubbing my weary temple. I have to report to the Civil Affairs Bureau at 8 a.m. tomorrow. The driver didn't say anything more after realizing that I wasn't in the mood to talk. I couldn't help but think as I observed the shifting landscape outside the window. I was just a typical delivery driver yesterday, preoccupied with obtaining positive reviews and hoping that tomorrow wouldn't bring rain. I was sitting in a fancy car today. The best screenwriter is life. Chapter 8. I reached the Civil Affairs Bureau the following morning. The three of them had been waiting for me when I walked in. Willow rolled her eyes at me and said, "You boasted about your $1,000,000 car yesterday, and now you think I'd believe that and beg you not to divorce me. I think you've been eating too much, and now you're hallucinating," Willow said. "I believed you wouldn't dare to come." And I smiled and said, "Same to you." Without replying, I proceeded directly to the divorce window to begin the process with Willow. Maria and my mother-in-law were a little taken aback by how readily I was complying. "This useless man looks kind of handsome dressed like this," my mother-in-law muttered. Maria furrowed her brows when she first saw my outfit and appeared to mutter to herself, "I don't recognize the brand, but why does it look so expensive?" Maria had a keen eye for designer goods and was obsessed with luxury brands. She could name them all, even though she didn't buy much. But since I was wearing a suit that had been custom-made and stitched together overnight by dozens of tailors, she couldn't have recognized it. It was not your typical luxury brand. Willow and I had already completed the divorce process and obtained the divorce certificate, which represented my freedom, before she and my mother-in-law could continue the conversation. As they displayed the divorce decree, the three of them grinned as well. I shook my head, turned around, and started to walk away when an unfamiliar girl grabbed my arm out of the blue. she exclaimed. "It's you, right? You're the grandson of the lost billionaire George." The three of them, who had been laughing and chatting, suddenly stopped talking and just stared at me. Chapter 9. I smiled at the girl and said, "Yes, but I don't think we know each other," as if I hadn't noticed. The girl smiled back at me and realized right away that she hadn't introduced herself. She introduced herself as an urban news reporter and gave me a business card. Anna is my name. Anna nodded and clarified, "Yes, but I don't have any bad intentions and I'm not stalking you." I nodded and said, "A reporter, but I still don't know you. I just happened to hear your name while on business here, and I was wondering if I could interview you and your grandfather. Everyone is interested in the billionaire's recognition of his family, after all. After recognizing your family, many people want to know if you plan to manage the Jusheng Group yourself, or if you plan to hire a manager with experience. Other people are also interested in how you spent the last 20-something years and how you initially became lost. After all, a lot of people, like you, have experienced family separation and undoubtedly long to be reunited with their loved ones. Accepting the interview could encourage many people and even give parents who are looking for their missing children hope." As a reporter, Anna asked me so many questions that I didn't even have time to respond. I was about to respond when Anna finally stopped, only to be interrupted by the sound of laughter from behind me. I was irritated when I turned around and saw Willow and her family laughing wildly. "You're running all out to make us regret, huh?" Maria stammered, trying to control her laughter when she saw Willow and my mother-in-law laughing so hard. "Yesterday, you were boasting about $1 million car, and today you're wearing a no-name suit. Okay, whatever. But I didn't think you would hire someone else to play the part. Are you truly going crazy, George? I'll tell you this, we won't believe you. My sister's eager to get a divorce from you. She likely wants to celebrate her happiness with fireworks. She won't regret it at all." Chapter 10. I rolled my eyes in my own eyes. After hearing these words, I nodded and said, "I can accept the interview, but," instead of my initial plan to be tactful and decline it. Anna interrupted me before I could finish. She asked Mr. Wang, looking at Willow's family and me, if we were going to get a divorce. "Is it because you're going to abandon the wife you married when you were poor? Why are you doing this? Was it Mr. Wang's request? Did he find you a new wife candidate from one of those families that do business with the Wang family?" I shook my head and said, "No," after recognizing my grandfather. "I had planned to go home and live a good life with my wife and her family, but you should be able to tell from their attitude toward me," she said. When Willow heard this, she appeared a little skeptical. She was familiar with me, after all. I couldn't afford to hire extras, and I couldn't possibly have any hidden funds. I said, "There are too many people here," grinning at Anna as she was about to speak. "We need a more private setting to discuss this in more detail. I have my car outside." After that, Anna jogged to keep up with me as I walked out quickly. Willow and her family also caught up quickly, but their expressions changed the moment they witnessed me and Anna get into a limited edition Rolls-Royce. I turned to smile appreciatively at David, the driver. Men do understand men. He had driven the most expensive car out of the garage because he knew I was here for a divorce. It was obvious to even non-auto enthusiasts that it was extremely valuable. Willow yelled at George to explain this to me as she knocked on the window. Get out of the car, but of course I didn't. How can you be the billionaire's grandson? I signaled to David to drive by, lifting the sunshade. Even though I was no longer able to see them, I could still hear their cries. Chapter 11. After bringing Anna back to the estate, I conducted a 2-hour interview with her and addressed all of her inquiries. My mother-in-law called me the day after the report was broadcast. She spoke in a submissive, flattering, and incredibly gentle tone when she said, "George, could you come to the hospital? Willow is in trouble. A day of marriage is said to be equivalent to 100 days of goodwill. Could you come for her?" I didn't want to go at first, but I decided that wouldn't be enough, so I packed up and went to the hospital. Willow was lying on the hospital bed, pale and looking quite unwell. When she saw me, her eyes brightened, and she forced a smile on her cracked lips, saying, "Husband, you came. You rame. You still love me, don't you?" I rolled my eyes, but didn't say I was just there to watch the drama. Instead, I coldly asked, "What did you call me here for?" Maria, with a sorrowful expression, said, "Brother-in-law, don't be so cold. Sis has suffered a lot for you." I nearly burst out laughing. After dedicating years of my life to these 3 women, all I got in return was betrayal and financial ruin. However, she was the one who claimed to be the victim. When she realized I wasn't answering, Willow found it difficult to contain her tears and said, "Actually, I didn't cheat. Although it was forced, I am pregnant. I was terrified. I was in a difficult situation because I wanted an abortion, but the doctor warned Dee that it might be dangerous. To spare you from suffering, I decided to file for divorce. However, my sister was correct. You love me so much that you wouldn't mind if I had an abortion. Something went wrong during the procedure, but I had intended to come find you to explain." I scowled and inquired, "What went wrong?" Chapter 12. My mother-in-law appeared to relax when I asked. "There was severe bleeding during the abortion, and they had to remove the uterus," she said, wiping away her tears. "William did all this for you. She didn't want me to tell you, but I know you. You're such a wonderful person." I wanted to laugh, but I had to control myself. "You must want the truth, and you'll forgive Willow for sure. What a joke. She cheated on me and got me pregnant." I didn't say any of this, though. Instead, I nodded quickly and said, "Husband, I was so stupid," with a wry smile. Maybe that's because I was so docile before Willow thought I believed her. "I forgot how much you loved me, and all I could think about was not letting you suffer. It would hurt you more if we broke up." Maria is correct. I didn't want anyone to violate me. Maria should have consoled me instead of abandoning me. Maria then added that her brother-in-law should consider it from Sis's point of view as the victim. Please pardon her. We should not harbor resentment because we are family. Don't you agree? My mother-in-law interrupted me before I could say anything. Of course, I knew George was a good man the moment I laid eyes on him. I've been treating him like my own son for all these years. How could he be upset about such a miscommunication? The 3 of them gave me beseeching looks as she spoke. All of the bitterness I had harbored over the years seemed to instantly melt away, to be replaced by an unfathomable joy that poured out of my heart. I couldn't hold back my laughter. I said, "You didn't say any of this when I was a useless man. Have you forgotten that I haven't?" I remember what you said, and the 3 of them looked embarrassed and unsure how to react. The 3 of them were taken aback and stared at me in silence as I went on. "Now that you know that I'm the grandson of the billionaire, the sole heir, and soon to be $100 billion CEO, you suddenly find something positive about me." Chapter 13. I stopped and said, "Stop dreaming. I'm only here to watch the drama and laugh at you. I know the true faces of the 3 of you better than anyone else. I can never forgive you, and I will never reconcile with a woman like you so fickle and untrustworthy. Come to think of it, I should thank you," I replied while smiling at Maria. My mother-in-law's eyes turned red when she heard this. "You wouldn't have even known about my resignation if you hadn't added my colleague on WeChat to monitor me. If it weren't for that, you all would have become rich by now. You little bitch, why do you have to meddle in everything? Do you know what we've lost because of you?" She slapped Maria across the face without thinking. Maria never tolerated suffering in silence. She vented her frustrations on Willow even though she dared not annoy my mother-in-law. "If you had been able to control yourself, none of this would have occurred," she said. "It's all your fault. You asked me to add George on WeChat so you could cheat." When Willow learned that she had lost out on a fortune and was still recuperating from her surgery, she became enraged. I married George, and we had feelings for each other, so why is it suddenly my fault?" She snapped, "Mom, didn't you tell me George was useless and that I should make use of my youth and beauty before I regretted it later? There was a time when our marriage was peaceful. You and Maria were the ones who insisted that marriage oppresses women, and that we should maintain our independence while relying on money and treating men like simps and tools. This is what brought us to this predicament. It's all your fault." I couldn't stop laughing as the three of them began to argue. The three of them stopped fighting when they realized I was doing it on purpose, and they just stared at me, their eyes narrowing with hatred. After some time, Willow sneered and said, "George, you're not that smart." My mother-in-law nodded and said, "George, you'll regret this. We called you here to give you face, but since you don't want to start over with me, don't blame us for turning on you." The show was enough for me. I smiled and said, "I don't know if I regret it or not. Right now, though, the three of you real scumbags are regretting it." I left the hospital room still grinning, not even bothering to look at their faces. However, I quickly realized they weren't kidding when they said I would regret it. My second trending topic caught my eye. What a failure of a man George is to leave his wife and kids behind. Chapter 14. I found Willow's live stream right away after clicking on the trending topic. She was still in the hospital and appeared even more gaunt than when I had last seen her. Maria and my mother-in-law were also present, and they both had equally awful looks. "I don't understand why George wants to divorce me," Willow sobbed as she said into the camera. "I begged him to stay for the sake of our child, but he still left without hesitation. Because of the heartbreak, I ended up losing the baby." Willow was unable to continue as she spoke. My mother-in-law quickly took over, saying, "We only found out about George being the grandson of the billionaire after seeing the news. That's when we realized he's rich now and doesn't think our daughter's good enough for him anymore." Maria sighed repeatedly, offering comfort to Willow and my mother-in-law before continuing, "I don't understand. Why is it that when men get money, they turn bad? George has been my brother-in-law for years. He ate and lived with our family, and we always treated him as one of our own. We never pressured him. We just thought that being together as a family was enough. But who would have thought that sincerity couldn't bring sincerity in return? My sister has been through all this, and I just want to ask him, did he ever truly care? But George only mocked her, saying she wasn't good enough for him, saying she deserved it. We couldn't take it anymore, so we decided to do this live stream. Our goal is to let the billionaire see George's true face and not give the company to this ungrateful scumbag, this vampire." After hearing this, the comments in the live stream flooded in so many that it was dizzying. Nearly every one of them was an insult to me. Chapter 15. My grandfather promptly called a meeting with a group of crisis management professionals and attorneys after the live stream went viral. Despite his anger, he reassured me, saying, "George, don't worry. You're not that kind of person. I know that. The Wang family's men have never been the kind to desert their spouses and kids." After some time of chit-chatting between the lawyers and the crisis management team, one of them clumsily said, "But this is a difficult situation to handle." First, there's the divorce. The story of the young master's divorce, which occurred the day after he recognized his grandfather, is widely known. Nobody is going to believe that Willow started the divorce, even though we know that she did. People will still believe that the young master concealed his identity and purposefully wooed Willow into becoming involved, even if we can demonstrate that Willow was the one who requested the divorce. The child has already left. We don't have any proof, even though the young master claims the child wasn't his. These days, people prefer to believe the victim and enjoy gossiping about the wealthy. Therefore, it is very difficult to restore the young master's reputation. How is it difficult to prove? I scowled and said, "As long as we find evidence of Willow's affair, the truth will come to light." I gave it some thought and quickly enumerated a few steps. When I finished, everyone nodded in agreement. My grandfather sighed with relief as he heard me say this. I've already begun looking into this. Despite your Wang ancestry, we did not raise you together. You may be too kind or mediocre, which has always worried me. However, I can now finally retire in peace because I can see how bold and strategic you are. That's what it was then. The lack of resolution to such a straightforward issue makes sense. Could the wealthy be this gullible? Chapter 16. We were wealthy enough that we quickly gathered proof that Willow had lied. Without hesitation, I started clearing my name right away. I started by disclosing Willow's affair records. Finding this wasn't difficult. While everyone was busy reading the hundreds of chat messages, I wasted no time in releasing our divorce agreement. I even located a witness, her balding boss Makoto, who said angrily on camera, "It was Willow who seduced me. She even forced me to divorce my wife, and now I've lost everything." It revealed that Willow and I were no longer together, and despite having paid the down payment and the mortgage on the house, I was left with nothing. Willow's family reacted quickly to this. Willow went live as soon as I started to explain things. "You knew I lost the child, so you bribed my boss to slander me. Are you going to deny giving him money?" she said, sobbing. "I don't understand. I just wanted an apology. Why did you have to spread these horrible rumors about me?" Of course, I had paid him, but I didn't need to admit that. Instead, I made my most powerful evidence, 2 video clips, public. One was the day I returned home surveillance footage. The surveillance footage showed the 3 of them making fun of me and acknowledging that the child wasn't mine. Ironically, my mother-in-law, who was wary of me, had put this surveillance footage in place. She claimed that I had stolen her gold bracelet, but she wouldn't acknowledge that she had lost it. She had specifically installed surveillance in the living room to look for evidence. I had the installation and account information because none of the 3 of them understood digital devices. They immediately removed the video after my identity was made public, but they were unaware that I had set up automatic backups out of concern that I might be harmed. The other video was of me visiting Willow in the hospital, and the deleted footage was secretly saved on my cloud storage, offering unquestionable evidence of my innocence. Naturally, my purpose for visiting the hospital was to obtain additional evidence, not to feel good about myself. Chapter 17. In addition to exposing the truth, these 2 videos also showed the 3 of their hideous faces. Online opinion swiftly changed. The people on the internet who had been tricked and played like pawns were incensed. In the live stream, the individuals who had been disparaging me flipped around and began assaulting the 3 of them. "Give me back my money. I spent $100 on gifts for you while eating fast food to help you out," was one of the many comments that poured in. I find it hard to believe that I was so blind. This is incredibly fulfilling, right? Despite George's late rise to wealth, this counterattack is truly remarkable. It's akin to a real-life drama of revenge. These 3 bitches would have destroyed George if he hadn't wanted to surprise them. Willow was forced to stop her stream in a matter of minutes, and her account was promptly banned. They hadn't even cashed out their earnings before the account freeze occurred. In addition, I filed a lawsuit against them on various grounds, including defamation. They were arrested before they could sell their home and escape. Ultimately, all 3 of them received 2-year prison sentences. They called me numerous times while they were incarcerated. On occasion, I would visit them, giving them hope and making them believe I was sentimental. However, I would eventually break that hope, leaving them broken and in a desperate situation. They never again dared to get in touch with me after a few of these exchanges. In the meantime, I went on a blind date that my grandfather had set up and found a young, morally upright woman. My twins were born on the day they were released from prison. Due to their inability to pay the fines, their house was put up for auction after they were released. I received a portion of the proceeds from the auction, while the other portion went to dishonest internet users. The 3 of them ended up with nothing but a ruined reputation as a result of all their schemes. They nearly choked on their bile because they felt such regret for it. However, there is no cure for regret in this life. The three of them, forced to return to their hometowns after becoming the objects of everyone's derision, had nowhere to hide. They were unable to find employment and nobody dared to leave the house. They ultimately had to sell their bodies. Reports state that authorities rounded them up multiple times before they vanished completely. Despite all of this, I could learn anything I wanted to. I wasn't interested, though. All I had to do was run my business and live a positive life. That was sufficient. I simply viewed the past as an unhappy dream. From now on, I will live happily and prosperously,